Untitled.com.
Work it, make it, do it, makes us harder, better, faster, stronger.
That don't kill me, can only make me stronger. I need you to hurry up now, cause I can't wait much longer.
Okay, today we're going to look at Chapter 8, which identifies and discusses political parties. So first of all, what exactly is a political party? The political scientist Andrew Downs once described a political party as a team of men and women seeking to control the government apparatus by gaining office in a duly constituted election. Essentially, a political party wants to become the government. They want to control the government. A political party is different than the interest groups who we looked at, because an interest group is not going to run a candidate from its particular group, but a political party wants to get its own people in office and thus become, the government, or want to control the government. And what we've seen ultimately unravel or unveil itself in the United States is party competition between the Democrats and the Republicans, who want to control as many of the public offices as possible. And so political parties are one of the linkage institutions that is going to connect the public to policymakers, or as it says right here, translates the inputs from the public into outputs from the policymakers. Again, think of linkage institution as linking people to the policymakers. So some of the functions or tasks of political parties include picking candidates to run for public office, and then promoting those candidates with the goal of getting them elected. And this includes running the campaigns, helping to raise money and to give money to candidates who are running for office. Give cues to voters, meaning most voters, if they align themselves or identify themselves with a political party, they are just going to take the messages that are given to them from the political parties about a particular candidate, instead of going through and individually researching every single candidate themselves. Parties also help develop a platform and articulate the issues and policies during a campaign, and parties coordinate the implementation of policies. And lastly, parties maintain a watchdog function, also called the loyal opposition, if they do not succeed in getting their candidate elected. So if a political party finds that it was defeated by an opponent, then the political party will take on a new role as trying to call out or monitor the work of the person who defeated their candidate, and hopefully trying to remove that person from office. And so when we look at the role of political parties in terms of the voting electorate, party identification is big. This is the self-proclaimed preference for one party or the other. In our American political culture, party identification is huge. We are such a political culture that is attached and loyal to labels. And once you have identified, not only do you now give yourself the label, but you essentially take on all of the ideals and beliefs of that particular party. We also can see a ticket splitting result as a result of having two major parties in our country. And ticket splitting most often is going to happen by independent party members. And this is when they vote for one party for one office and the other party for another office. And again, that's going to be more likely with independent voters. But if someone is registered as a Republican, it's pretty much expected that they will vote for all the Republican candidates on a ticket, and vice versa for the Democratic voters. So let's look at party organization and where their work begins. And grassroots politics is the political action at the local level. And so when we say grassroots politics, we're talking about the people at the I don't want to say bottom level, because that sounds condescending, but they're with the people. They're at the local level. So we're not talking about lobbyists or congressmen. We're talking about the people in the city of San Diego, in the city of Solana Beach, in the city of Carlsbad, who are working to try to help their party get its candidates elected. A great example, if any of you voted in the gubernatorial election last week, the people who volunteer their time to run that polling place, that's an example of grassroots politics. So if you went to a polling place, and mine was actually in the garage of one of my neighbors, when I went there, there were 4 volunteers from different political parties, and they were responsible for registering the voters, checking them in, handing them ballots, and then receiving the ballots. And so that would be an example of people who are doing the work at the ground level. And political parties help organize their members to elect candidates through the following techniques. And we've addressed a lot of these, but these are examples of this grassroots politics: fundraising efforts, holding town meetings, building local coalitions to help candidates get elected, targeting voter registration, establishing voter contact through direct mailing and other media, and getting out the vote. And when we look at political party eras in American history, there's actually like what I would say the big four political eras in our history. And the first one we're going to look at began in 1828, and this is when Andrew Jackson ran as a Democrat and defeated the Whig candidate, and he essentially established what would become known as the Democratic dominance in politics up until 1860, where Abraham Lincoln established the new Republican era, and this continued with William McKinley in 1896 as well. And then it wasn't until 1932 where FDR, oh my gosh, do you guys see, totally had dyslexia, where Franklin Delano Roosevelt established the Democratic era, which would stay in place until Richard Nixon. And since Richard Nixon's election, we've seen a new trend in political party eras known as the divided government, and this is when one party controlled the presidency and the other controlled the Congress. Most recently, George W. Bush faced a Democratic Congress after the 2006 midterm elections, and Barack Obama had to deal with a Republican House in 2010 and 2013, and he now will have to contend with a Republican-controlled House and Senate as a result of the most recent midterm elections. Okay, party platform. This is another function of a political party. They help establish and articulate what the platform is. And this is the outline of the philosophy, practice, and goals of a party and the candidates running for office from that party. It's adopted at the party's national convention by its elected delegates. And this is definitely not, there is potential for there to be divisiveness within the same political party, but depending upon the platform. Party differences can lead to a splintered party, and we've seen this before, probably most notably in the 1940s and 50s over civil rights. The Democratic Party was badly splintered because some of the delegates were really in favor of civil rights and others were not. And so even though they were a part of the same umbrella political party, it was not all hunky-dory. Okay, party realignment is the movement of voters from one political party to another, resulting in a major shift in succeeding elections. And this is characterized by the start of a new party era as a result of what is called a critical election. And so in 1968, we saw an era of divided government, which I mentioned earlier, where the Republicans dominated the executive branch and the Democrats dominated Congress. In 1980, traditional Democrats sort of flipped the switch and voted for Reagan, who was a Republican, and those people became known as Reagan Democrats. And in 1994, Republicans took control of Congress for the first time in 40 years. And so again, the movement of voters from one political party to another results in a major shift. This is party realignment, and these are the three eras to take note of, just in case those show up on test questions at all. And then we see what's known as party dealignment, and this is when voters move away from the two major political parties and declare themselves as independent or aligning with a third political party. And this takes place when the electorate becomes dissatisfied with the actions of the Democrats or the Republicans. And this is measured by a decline in the two major party identifications and the success of a third party candidate running for office. And these successful third party candidates include George Wallace, Ross Perot, and Ralph Nader, and they attracted voters from the Democratic and Republican parties and had a major impact on the 1968, 1992, and 2000 elections.